The team at Find Your Flex. Today we're going to be talking transferable skills, whether that means you want to re-career halfway through, or maybe you've been thinking about doing looking at a different industry post-pandemic. I think we're all kind of re-evaluating who we are and where we come from and what makes us happy. So today is all about that, how we can best prepare you to reskill your CV and identify what your transferable skills are. I am joined by the lovely Amy, Di and Helen. I'm going to let them do intros. Let's start with Amy. How are you today?
Hello, I'm doing very well. I am a teacher, considering looking at how my skills can be transferred to other careers. So me and Ted are just having maternity leave at the moment and just looking at what's out there.
Awesome. Thank you. Di?
Hi there, my name's Di Keller and I currently work at Carbon Homes, but I'm also involved in some regional projects with the Institute of Directors and the North East Chamber of Commerce. My speciality is around equality, diversity and inclusion, so looking at people's transferable skills and helping them to bring them to life really, and just almost believing in themselves, but trying to get organisations to understand the value and benefit of that as well.
Wicked. Thanks, Di. Helen?
I'm Helen. I'm the head of marketing and social media for the Find Your Flex group, and I'm a career changer myself. So about 5 years ago, I moved from a 13-year career in midwifery and moved into marketing. So pretty big change. So hopefully I'll be able to add something to this conversation.
Awesome. No, thank you all for joining me. I think today should be quite interesting. Across the other podcasts that we've been recording, we've been looking at sort of ATS systems and all of the other different things that candidates kind of come up against when they're looking to look for a job. And I guess when you're looking to re-career, you kind of add yourself an extra hurdle. And I think when, people, I mean, certainly from my experience, when people have been looking to re-career and thinking about, one, which industry do you move into, where does your passion lie, then trying to figure out, okay, which of my skills that I've had in my previous job can I bring to that role, I think that becomes a really interesting conversation. Di, your experience in the HR world, I mean, is it geared to helping people to transfer into new industries? Is there appetite out there for it?
I think we're definitely moving more towards that. I think although it's been the most horrendous last sort of 18 months or so, I think it has helped organisations to see that they can do things differently and survive. I also think that there is a huge pool of people out there that industry's changed a huge amount over the last 18 months. It was already, but it's moved exponentially. And I think we're now talking about moving into different careers. So I think there is definitely some appetite there, which is been funded and supported. I think some organisations are more comfortable with that than others. I think some will always sort of go back to what they know works, and if they're in a really kind of traditional environment, they're not always open to that mass change of looking at how you can bring sort of those different skills and experiences into your organisation. Sometimes we just kind of crack on with the way that we did it. You mentioned ATS, the applicant tracking systems. We don't always realise the negativity they can cause for somebody in terms of that application. But we've always used it. We've always managed to recruit off it. So we continue to do it rather than looking at, are there other ways that we can be doing this? So it's really an opportunity for people to try things and to look at things a little bit differently. Because if you look at some of the skills, we've got Amy on here with Ted. She's just had a new baby. The skills you learn having a baby, oh my goodness, it's phenomenal. But yet we wouldn't necessarily think of putting that into a CV. Oh, I was a mum. Just a mum. I was just a mum for that 2 years that I was off, or that year that I was off. But actually, you learn a huge amount of skills. So it's how we can start to get people to have the confidence in themselves to bring them to life, but how we can start to help HR teams to recognise the value in those skills, and just to be a little bit more open-minded in their approach to their recruitment and how they can support people to come through in different ways. So yes, there is movement in a positive direction. It's not going to happen overnight, and some companies will take years to catch up, but they're the ones that are missing out on the talent pool. Our skills generally are changing. Things we've all learned over the last 18 months, how much more technologically competent we've become, resilience and all of those things. If you've chosen to embrace that, there's been tons of free webinars to do self-development and things like that. If you've chosen to embrace some of that opportunity and seen it as that, then you've got so much more to offer, and you've increased your talent and what you're about. And it's, do organisations want to grab hold of all of this new, fresh talent, these people that are driven enough to be self-learning, to look at new careers, to look at new opportunities? Are businesses wanting to take advantage of that, or are they just going to settle for what they've always had? They will eventually. I believe it will eventually, that those that have got that appetite to be more innovative in their approach will eventually be the businesses that everybody wants to work with.
Yeah, it's more it's looking for that candidate who's more entrepreneurial, I guess, by nature, in terms of that self-development, and I guess organizational change needs to happen to allow people to recruit those type of candidates. I mean, coming back to sort of the basics, we're talking about skills-based CVs, aren't we? I think when people are looking to re-career versus the traditional chronological ones, and Di, you were obviously saying there that a lot of employers are still embracing that chronological one, and they can't see how you can go from a teacher or a midwife into another form of career because they're not addressing that as a set of skills, a bit like we do with job descriptions. They become very flouncy versus actually what's the functional nature of that role. Helen, how did you find it? I mean, you obviously came to a decision, and I'm guessing the flexibility was the driver for you.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, it came to a point after, it was after my second child, actually. With my first child, nursery was on site at work. It all kind of worked very well. But then as my eldest got to school age and my youngest was still a baby and I was looking at going back to work, it kind of became quite clear that I can't be in two places at once. And then, with no family support for childcare, no childminders in the area, before and after school clubs that didn't cater for the hours that I needed to do to travel between home and work, it was sort of like, well, what am I going to do? And you do go through that period, I think, after having a baby, of thinking, what can I do? What am I worth? And is there anything else that I can do apart from this job that I've done for the last kind of like 10 to 15 years? And you kind of like start to kind of have a bit of self-doubt. But I think for me, it was kind of trying to turn that round and have a bit of like self-belief, that, call these skills that I've acquired in my job. Okay, some are very specific to the role, but some are very generic and can be applied to other roles. I've acquired those over like the last like 13 years. And before that, in my other roles, your jobs that you do while you're studying, they're not, I can still apply them to another role, but they're not there for nothing. But it's trying to figure out in your head how you can apply those skills into another role. What have you done? What projects have you done? What things have you learned? How have you managed teams? How have you delivered projects over the years? And how can you move that into another role? But I think a lot of it does come down to self-belief and self-awareness. And being able to see things from different perspectives. So kind of like taking your skills out of that role and seeing how you can move it into another role. It was quite a journey, really. It's not something that happened overnight. It's not something that, kind of just decided on a whim and then moved into another industry. It did take a lot of time and a lot of learning. You have to kind of put that effort in and that determination into moving into a different career.
And how easy was that did you know that you wanted to go into marketing? How did you identify that actually, obviously after being a midwife for that long, how did you even identify that actually, what am I interested in? Because I'm assuming midwifery was something that you were passionate about before you got into it. Like how, and not why did that passion change, but because obviously, flexibility, we know what it's like as parents, it can be quite difficult to manage both home life and outside working if you don't have that flexibility to work remotely. But how did you even get to the point where you knew that marketing was for you? and then go about developing yourself sort of into that industry?
It's a funny one people do. Whenever people ask me, what I do in marketing and midwifery before, so it's a little bit different, how have you managed to go from like that industry into marketing? But I think while I was off on maternity leave, and I, thought, I need to do something. I need to change careers. I need flexibility. I did take a career break, so that did give me kind of a bit of breathing space to think about it. And while I was off it, and like I say, like with a lot of new mums, you go through that kind of like weird headspace of you think, as every mum does, you wonder if what you're doing is right. You postnatal depression, issues with bringing a baby into the world and trying to manage all that. I started writing blogs, and I mean, I didn't have any kind of desire to be some major influence or anything. It was more just a cathartic way of actually getting my feelings down on paper about how I was managing at the time. But as I started to think, well, there's other people feeling like this, I want to get these blogs on, read by people, to help people. And I think that was my first step into marketing, because I found that I was interested in creating the website. I was interested in social media. I was interested in trying to see how that piece of writing that I've did can be read by the audience that I want it to be read by. And it's just those little skills kind of came into play, and I started thinking I actually really enjoy doing this, and what can I do something with this as a career? A little bit of research, found a course in digital marketing, did my reading, did my research, and thought, yes, this is what I want to do, and went for it. So that was kind of like the short kind of a snippet of how I got in from one career into another career. But when I look back over the years when I was at school, as everybody does, you have the career chats with with your teachers, and I always, although I was good at maths, that was kind of like the angle that they kind of pushed me to, the maths and biology, whereas I actually really enjoyed art. So it was kind of like they pushed me down the maths and the biology route. And that's what I did at A levels, and that's what I did at uni, and that's kind of like what led me into midwifery. So it was kind of a natural progression from school, from what I was advised, from what I was good at, what subjects I was good at. But actually, when I look back, I really enjoyed doing art and the more creative side of things. It's almost like I've gone full circle to what I liked when I was at school.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think education and those guidance counsellors in those early formative years, we've been talking a lot about training in some other podcasts as well, and I think that's a really interesting one of kind of what's expected of us versus what we genuinely enjoy doing. I mean, Amy, coming on to you, I know you are currently on maternity leave. Hello, Teddy. And I guess teaching is always one of those areas that doesn't have a lot of flexibility in, and I think for women and men who are parents going into the teaching profession, or who maybe weren't parents and then become parents, I think it's definitely an industry that could do with a certain level of reform around flexibility, shall we say. But I guess you're in a position now where you're thinking about, what does the future hold?
Absolutely. So lockdown was interesting because it forced schools to rethink how we're going to teach from home, and to be honest, it didn't work because there was lots of children that weren't accessing it, and there was lots of teachers who did more than others, and then when we've gone back, there's a huge push, especially from academies, to be like functioning to how we were before lockdown, and it's just not feasible because the kids have missed so much, so I think that is going to play a massive element in if schools can ever reform. And I think as well, if you did want flexibility, your only option is to go part-time, which sounds ideal, but actually because of the workload and because of the job share and your responsibility of the teacher, you just end up working the same hours, but for part-time pay from home. So it is kind of a minefield for people that do want a more flexible work structure in teaching, unless, I guess, if you were a secondary school teacher, but because I'm a primary school teacher, I've struggled really to see how flexibility could become part of school life.
Yeah. And I guess So I guess when you're thinking about returning and you're going back, I mean, obviously you'll be weighing the pros and cons of staying within that industry. When you've thought about potentially leaving, if that becomes a viable option, have you thought yet? Have you found a starting point in terms of kind of what you're looking at? Is it going to be around stuff that you enjoy? Obviously, the last 2 years, like you say, we've been in lockdown. It's made a lot of people reevaluate where they are and who they are and where they get their enjoyment from. Is that entered into your thinking at all?
It has. So I have a huge interest in sort of yoga and mindfulness, and I retrained while I was teaching, so outside of school hours, and I've been pushing for that to become like a bigger part of the curriculum. So I think there's a huge place for it. There's just so many other factors to allowing that to happen. Like you said earlier, like schools have to reach certain targets, so then the academic subjects become more of a focus, which means they lose out on the art and the history and the geography, that kind of way. So I've been thinking, is there a way that I could step back from sort of mainstream teaching and perhaps even start my own business or join a company that already does that in schools? It's just like you were saying earlier, Helen, it's confidence, and do you have the confidence to do that and market yourself as somebody who's got experience in schools, which is also transferable to running a company that can go into schools and offer mindfulness and another creative outlet for schools for children who are struggling with sort of behaviour or mental health issues, or just generally how to do something creatively because they're not getting that enough in schools. Having the confidence to do that. So at the minute, I feel like having just had a baby, my brain is just like super. And as much as I am proactive and have often gone and sought CPD and other training to keep sort of my options open and not just be stuck in that teacher role, I don't feel massively confident to approach schools to offer the skills that I know that I have.
Yeah. So, Amy, could you just pop your microphone back on mute? Thank you. So we'll edit this bit out. Di.
Yeah.
So taking on Amy's point there around confidence and things like that, I'm getting interference. I'm hearing something in the background like a shh. I'm going to shut my window just in case it's me. Won't be a sec. I think it's the washing machine.
No, it still just sounds the same.
No, it's not.
I can still hear it when I put mine on mute as well.
I don't know where that noise is coming from.
It's gone now.
Right. Oh no, now it's back.
Must be me then, because I'm muted and then unmuted.
Maybe take your headphones out, Di.
I'll get a crackle off my laptop if I do that.
Okay. Right, it's gone again now. Oh, now it's back. Well,
It is me then. It is me, sorry.
I can still hear it.
I wonder if it's just the fan off my laptop.
Maybe.
Is that better if I move further away from it?
Oh, but now I can't see you. You'll have to turn your computer around. Yeah, that should be all right. Well, I just didn't know. I can't hear it as much now. It is still slightly there, but hopefully
we'll fan off my laptop.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't affect the other recordings, but it just means that when you're talking, it'll cut out that noise. Yep. So we should hopefully be all right. Okay, great. So
I'll mute when I'm not talking then.
Wicked, thank you. Okay, so I'm good. Okay, so Di, coming back to you, obviously, what Amy was sort of saying there, confidence, especially for people who are first-time parents and or just having that period out of work. Obviously, it can take a lot for people to return, and that's a lot when you're returning to the industry that you kind of left. Thinking about returning to a completely new industry is kind of the working world's kind of not geared for that, is it? All of the returner programs are returned to the same field. I think one thing that I found really interesting when we did a micro fair a couple of years ago, actually in Newcastle, where Amy's based, was we had loads of teachers turn up on that day and loads of research fellows and things like that from universities who were looking to move into different industries because they couldn't find that flexibility within the teaching profession. And one of the employers that were there on the day actually turned around and said, you know, I think we've got our returner program wrong. We should really be looking to recruit from people who are wanting to return from different industries, because look at the skill sets these teachers have. You know, they're able to talk in front of a room full of people and deliver information. And that's a really unique skill, but it is a transferable skill that can move into the sales industry or business development or, you know, marketing and media. Like, you've got to be able to take information and change it and disseminate it back out so that it's learnable. And that is such a valuable skill. Are we missing a trick from an HR point of view, from a business point of view? I know obviously you can talk about the whole confidence side of things. And I guess, should there be more stuff out there to help women like Amy to get that confidence back and actually help them find their value?
I think it's a whole cycle of things, to be fair. I don't think there is one solution. We've talked a lot about schools, and I think schools do an amazing job of educating people around academic subjects, but not around all of the great things that you're experiencing at school. And that's no disrespect to teachers, because I know they're driven by, you know, the curriculums and what they have to look at. But actually, some of the things that children regularly display at school are very positive to go into the world of work, but all it's kind of seen as is the grades that they come out of. So if you think that your mindset throughout that whole time of being through school is always just about that end result and not about all of the things that make you get there, so your timekeeping, how you are with other people, what groups you've been part of, what lessons you've flourished in, all you sort of focused on is that end result. And my son, having just had his GCSE results, I can see very much how, you know, all of the broader skills that he has in his life, for that moment of getting his results, that was just a nothing. All he could focus on was the results. So I think from a very early age, we believe that it's just that one thing that we're known for. So I think there's a lot of work to do, both as we bring people into organisations, and I think some places do some great work on this. And it's about looking at that fairness of opportunity for people. So some people will more naturally be confident, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't help the ones that aren't, in terms of how they can, you know, bring that skill to life in themselves. I do think that there is a huge opportunity for for organisations to bring people from different industries. I think, you know, we often see people transferring within the workplace. So you might transfer from one kind of business area into another. So I think we often see that within a workplace. So you know them, so you feel comfortable with them. Oh, great, we've got somebody doing this secondment or whatever. How can we start to create that within industry? Maybe work more regionally around some of those things, so we keep our talent in the regions that we work in. I'm very passionate about keeping people in the Northeast and not losing our talent to where they feel there may be greater opportunities. There are some amazing companies in the Northeast and there are some amazing opportunities, but how do we make sure that people are aware of those, and how do organisations themselves have the confidence to do that? So I think there's levels of confidence within organisations to move that forward. I think there's a huge part that they need to play in helping schools and education with some of that understanding. And there are programs out there through the Gatsby benchmarks where schools want to engage with organisations, want to understand about careers and opportunities and the different things that are there, so that it doesn't just rest on those academic results that you got. Because if you've had a bad day, you've had a bad day. And then how can we start to build the confidence within people, be that somebody starting out for the first time in a job, be that somebody changing their career, somebody coming back from a long period of illness, or somebody who's coming back from maternity leave. there's confidence that we need to look in all of that, but we get very much set in that mindset. You know, we hear so often that, oh, women lose the confidence when they've left work to have a baby. So you leave work to have a baby thinking, oh, everybody else loses their confidence. This must be what's happening to me. And you almost then go into fitting into that mold of what things are. And we all just crack on with our own lives. So we don't necessarily recognise that people around us are struggling with that confidence. You know, if you've been a really bubbly person at work, people would never expect that you would struggle with your confidence. So we then make some assumptions around that and don't necessarily reach out and help people in the way that we could. So there is a responsibility on organisations to do some of that, but there's also a bit of a responsibility on services that support new mums, for an example, where we see that confidence is lost. There's also your own network around you. How can you make sure that they are, you know, not just telling you what a great mum you are, but oh my gosh, this is like when you did this, or, you know, and remembering those skills that you have. But there are some things that we can do ourselves, and that is, you know, evaluating what your skills are before you leave your existing whatever it is, whether you're looking to career change or whatever. Actually, while I'm in this really positive frame of mind, while I'm in a really cool place, let me just write down what I'm good at, what I enjoy, things I don't enjoy. And then when you come to a place of no confidence, and this can work right through your career, to be fair, you can refer back to that. What is it that I love about myself? What is it that I want to be known for? What are the things that I harness really well? So my career has changed lots of different ways over the years, but fundamentally behind that, I've got a really strong administrative and organised background. So it enables me to do some of the more creative stuff that I want to do, because I'm able to write a project plan to sit behind that and follow that. Then I can allow my brain to go, whoa, nice big shiny thing, but also then pull myself back to my project plan. So I've got sort of some strong skills, but would you say that somebody in my role would need a strong administrative background? Not necessarily, but that is actually fundamental to help keeping me on track when I keep seeing new big shiny things. Yeah. So it's about recognising some of that within yourselves right through your career. We don't do enough of that self-reflection. Oh my gosh, we can't talk about how good we are at something. That's so not the right thing to do, but we should. And you should be asking people around you, people who work with you, tell me something that you really like about me, and just be dead honest and tell me something that really irritates you about me. And if you could change it in me, what would you do? And you can either choose to do something about that or leave it behind. You know, you've got to be ready to take feedback, but we should all be ready to take that feedback, because out of the feedback, you get the things that you're really good on, so you can harness onto that and really build on it. And the things that people are reflecting on that you're not very good at, you might be like working hard as to be good at something, but it's maybe just not there for you. So actually let it go and move on to something else and look at where you can do something that is worthwhile. I don't know if that kind of answered that question. I know I went off about a billion tangents there, but that was kind of how I thought about confidence.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so thanks for that regarding the confidence building and what's kind of required there. Amy, I mean, have you thought about next steps? Kind of, you know, have you thought about writing a CV again? I guess as a teacher, you kind of haven't had to go through that process, because I guess with public sector, it's very much more about, I guess, application filling in and things like that. Have you thought about where to start when it comes to potentially looking for something different?
I have. I started writing a CV, you know, looking what's out there. It's such a strange concept, having been in the school, in sort of teaching side of things, because their application process is insane. Like, you have the huge form, and then you've got 1,000 things to do on the interview. And it does sort of make you think like, oh, I am just a teacher. Like, I don't know how those skills are transferable. But then I think things like LinkedIn help, because you can look at other people's work backgrounds in the industry that you have, and then actually realise, oh, I do have those skills from teaching, and I could use that information that they've put forward in, like, not copy it, but in my own sort of way. So things like that becoming more popular have been really helpful to me. And then just actually things like this, like listening to different podcasts, radio programs or blogs, like you were saying earlier. It's just about getting organised and doing the research, isn't it? So I have started writing a CV. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with it, what I'm going to apply to, but it is helping with the confidence to think, actually, I do have a large set of skills. I've just, like you said, I've got to be more willing to look at them in a confident way and not feel like I'm being big-headed.
Yeah.
So it is great that there are more things like this out there for people to realise, actually, yes, my skills are transferable.
Yeah. I think technology helps, doesn't it? Technology does help. I think you look at, I mean, we've been doing it. I just recently helped Lewis, my stepson, and that's sort of when you're thinking about transferable skills and skills-based CVs, actually early careers, skills-based CVs are really important because they don't have that chronology that, you know, people who've been working for 10 years have, and that you can see that experience and stuff like that sort of progress. And I found Canva and tools like that really useful in terms of just giving people a template, like, because like you say, there's not much in schools or colleges or universities that sort of help with that kind of side of things. And I think the practical elements of what goes into a skills-based CV, especially when you are trying to establish what your transferable skills are and what you can and can't do, I think even just having that process of writing it down can kind of help center your mind of kind of where you want to go and what other industries you want to do, or which parts of the working world will open itself up to you. I mean, Helen, we've obviously done a lot of work with it at Find Your Flex around output and talking to employers about profiling their roles in different ways. Do you think employers are changing? Are they getting to the point where actually it's easy for candidates to potentially see how their skills can transfer into other roles, or do we still have a long way to go?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think some companies are very forward thinking and are open-minded. So when a candidate comes forward and they're like, well, you know, I've not got a great deal of experience in this role, but I know I can do it because I've got this skill set. That there are those that will say, do you know what, let's give this person a try. I think, I can see the determination. I can see that they can learn, so that they're a good fit for the culture, the company, and I think they can do the job. But I still think there's still a lot of employers out there like, well, they haven't got the experience, so no.
Yeah.
So I think we've still got a lot of people have got a long way to go with this.
Yeah, and I think there's the other side of it from an employer perspective, where employers do look at transferable skills, is do they still see those people going into junior roles? Because with vast experience comes knowledge, and they may not want to go back to an entry-level career. I mean, how often do we see that, people changing roles but not necessarily having to start again from the bottom and working their way up into their new chosen profession?
I think with things like returner programs, that's helped that. So people are going in at the level that they left at. But if we look at sort of people leaving the military, for an example, they might have served 22 years, I think is the full-term service, and, you know, done goodness knows whatever in terms of skills. And they come into civilian roles and quite often have to start at the bottom, at the entry level of whatever they've retrained in. And that can be kind of demoralizing for people in terms of having to do that, to go from sort of the position that they were in to coming down. You can move through that more quickly than others. And I think, you know, companies do tend to see that progress and those underlying skills that you've got. But unfortunately, there will always be those that won't, and you do have to literally start at the bottom and work up. I think with a lot of these things, it's a mixed bag. So it's about looking at the companies. You know, if you're wanting to reskill, look at the companies that you're going to and see what kind of support and offerings that they've got in place for that, and see how innovative they are being in their approaches. You can kind of get a bit of a fix on sort of those ideas. Amy alluded to the hideous application forms of like going for teacher. You know, there's a lot of the public sector have quite labour intensive application forms. Looking at an industry like that, you might think, as much as I don't want to draw people away from those areas, but you might think, oh my gosh, when I start filling that out, if they ask me about my education, the last thing I did was my GCSEs. But you know what? For the last however many years I've got all of this knowledge and experience. How do I put that when they're asking for my qualifications? How do I quantify that? How do I put that? But then I might go to another organisation that they might ask you to send a CV or look at it in a different way, which gives you a chance to show your personality. And it's how can you do that in what, you know, even if you've got an application form to fill out, how can you bring your personality into that so that they might just think, do you know what? They haven't quite hit what goes through here. I mean, when it's automated, as we were talking about earlier, not as easy, but if people are looking through them, they might just see something, what's different about your CV? What have you done that's slightly different? Because if I'm looking through 50, if there's somebody that's just done something slightly different, even a different font, it's like, oh, yes, let me read this one, just for a break on the eyes. Yeah. So I'm not about putting loads of crazy pictures on your CV unless you're going into an art and design kind of role. But it's just about what is going to make you stand out from things. But it's about doing your research about the company as well, and looking for those companies that are more open to this, more, you know, skills-based way of working. And looking for that skills. What are they saying on their blurb, on their shop window, on their intranet site? What are they saying about what they're looking for? Do they talk about being a skills-focused organisation? If so, then that's maybe somewhere where you want to start looking at things for that. Make sure as well that if you aren't successful, that you get the feedback from what you've done, because that is just all helping to advance what you've got. I've got, when Amy was on about CVs earlier and she started that, I've got something that's titled in my files the big document, and that's kind of just got all of my brain dump on it around things that I've enjoyed doing, things that I've done, different jobs that I've done. So when you're looking at applying for things, you can really, if you just read back on some of, you think, oh my gosh, I've forgotten I did that, but actually that would be like really useful in terms of what I'm looking at doing here. I might have done it 10 years ago, but you don't forget that. You've been through it, you've been through that process and you've done it. How do you bring that to life? And it might be that you would look at doing something from a volunteer perspective, just to get that skill back up to date and just to show that you're looking and working within that. So I think, you know, there's work to do on both sides, both from an applicant perspective and from organisation perspective on that as well.
And I guess, you know, if you are a parent coming back into it, I guess that self-development side really helps, doesn't it? Because it kind of gets your brain to focus. Because I know I really struggled when I was at home with my kids. I mean, the amount of time I put my keys in the fridge and forgot where they were, just ridiculous. And I think, like Amy said earlier,
kids there and not kids.
Oh yeah, no.
Kids
in the washing machine. Yeah, no. It is, because it is, you know, you're it's about well-being and understanding your worth. And when you're literally covered in baby puke and, you know, you smell even though you've had a shower 10 minutes ago, and you don't feel like you're mentally kind of in that state to actually, well, what am I worth? How do I get this down on a piece of paper that somebody else is going to critique? And I think, you know, starting with that self-development and actually like finding bits and pieces, like doing what you enjoy, especially if you are going to re-career into something that you're going to enjoy doing. I mean, Helen, that's what you did essentially, wasn't it, in terms of taking what you used to do when you were sort of 14, 15, 16 and really enjoyed and turned it into a way to work that works for you.
Yeah, I think everybody's kind of touched on the point of, like, there's one thing is looking at the skills you've acquired over time and kind of noting down those skills, but like you say, it's kind of like taking out of those the ones that you actually enjoy doing, because it's no point trying to re-career or find a career in skills that you've got that you actually don't enjoy.
Yeah,
it's picking out those that you really enjoy, having a bit of self-belief, some self-awareness, and then trying to apply them into different roles.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and I think we need to take away some of the guilt as well. We have guilt around, I'm a mum, you know, like, what am I doing here? You've just brought a life into the world. This is amazing. You're totally responsible for this tiny human. And we forget and we feel guilty because we're not at work and we're not doing it all. I don't believe you can do everything. You've got to just work around where your energy's at and where you feel comfortable at, and don't feel guilty about that. So if you're looking at wanting to do something that feeds your soul, don't feel guilty if that isn't what everybody else expected you to do. And I think that helps to build your confidence as well, that if you remove that guilt of, if you've got a gap in your CV, why? Because I had an amazing 2 years with my child, and you know what? I learned so much. It was phenomenal. and just own it rather than feeling guilty about that gap.
Yeah. And it's not just a female thing anymore either, is it? I mean, if you think about it, we're all living longer. There's no way we're going to literally do the same job for 70 years or however long. I mean, we're never going to get to retire. I've kind of come to terms with that. But, you know, I'm not going to want to do the same things. You know, I'm not doing the same thing now that I'm 40 that I did when I'm 20 or that when I was 30. And I'm sure that by the time I get to 50, obviously, if I'm not Prime Minister, there's going to be something else that I'm going to want to do. And I think that's just part and parcel of life. And I don't think it always seemed to be the women that had to make the change because we had the babies. And I think that's starting to change now. I think, you know, the pandemic has given men just as much insight as women as actually because you're not taking the foot off the gas, you're just working in a different way and you're learning how to be more productive. And actually, you've also reevaluated at the same time because we've lost people, we've lost loved ones. We're reevaluating actually who we are and what our values are. And if that doesn't translate through to our employers, we might think, well, actually, this is an industry that I don't want to work in anymore. You know, it's not green or sustainable enough. And actually, I want to do something that's beneficial to my fellow man or the planet or whatever it might be. And so I think there's going to be more people that are going to have to use their transferable skills to access different industries. And I think, you know, to sum it up, employers kind of need to be putting the legwork in now because there's a war for talent. Everyone's telling me there's no talent out there. There's bags of talent out there. They're just not engaging with your brand. Your employer value proposition is just not good enough. And now is the time to go away and think about realistically who you are as a company and what kind of people do you want to attract? Because it might be teachers, it might be somebody from a different industry, but actually they could add so much more value to your industry as well. So hopefully that sums up today and it will help candidates think about who they are and normalise transferring and thinking about looking at industries in a different way. Does everybody want to give a final word to our listeners today and maybe just one final tip for anybody thinking about recareering and how to go about that? Helen, should we start with you?
I guess when it comes to transferable skills and skills-based CV, it's all about putting your best self forward. You know, pick out your key skills, the skills that you enjoy, and really kind of describe to your potential new employer how you can apply those skills in that role. You know, paint the picture for them of you in their company.
Wicked. Amy?
I think just to fellow teachers out there, don't pigeonhole yourself into thinking that this is all you can do. Even if you wanted to stay teaching part-time, you still have the option to go out there and learn a new skill or do something else, like Di said, that feeds your soul. You don't just have to stay teaching, and teaching doesn't have to just be that. You could encourage, you know, your workmate, your colleagues and senior staff to look at staff models and look at what you're teaching. And how you can change that now that we're coming out of the pandemic and what needs to change kind of thing. Because I think we very quickly fall into a trap of being told what to do by the higher-ups. So just don't be afraid to put your voice out there.
Thank you. And Di?
I think I would just say be brave and just if you know, our gut instinct tells us a lot. And if you are not happy in what you do, be brave about that and start working through, and you will get to the point where your gut tells you that the move that you're doing is the right thing. So you might think about transferring and it might just not be the right time for you, but keep hold of that and keep working on it and keep thinking about why it is that you wanted to change. What was it that you wanted? Was it the industry? Was it the employer? Do I just want something different out of life? And hold on to that, and you will find your gut will tell you when it's the right time for you, and you will then find that bravery and that self-belief that will take you forward. And just surround yourself with awesome people that help you through that journey.
Yeah, great advice, Di. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining me today. And please all join me next week for our next podcast on the future of work. See you later.